Hello my partners in crime, my new members, I love it. Welcome. Now, as I promised, this case, excuse my phone in the background because I'm doing so much stuff, but this case is a sold case, but these have got the links to Fred and Rose West, and this is David and Pauline Williams. This is a UK case. Now, this is the link between the sex gang, the grooming gang. These people were terrible, and they are so linked to Rose and Fred West. And what brought the link in to them was, one, not just their crimes, because these crimes were atrocious of what these people did, but between this paedophile gang that we know that Fred and Rose West were in. We knew they were in something. It's difficult to prove because, one, Fred, as we know, killed himself, and Rose is now in prison and would not say ever anything about anything, and especially she wouldn't say anything about David and Pauline Williams, who this case is about. But David and Pauline Williams loved to say about, especially David, about his links to the West, and I think it was done from a postcard, you see, and it was a postcard sent from Rose to David Williams, this perpetrator we're going to talk about now, and his wife, Pauline. Now, it's encrypted. It's definitely encrypted. There's a lot going on there in this case, a real lot. Now, these people are in prison for a very long time. So this postcard is believed sent from serial killers Fred and Rose West when they were on holiday, and they left their children, or they left Mia or May with one of Fred Rose's kids with them, with the Williams. And it was sort of things that said within this postcard, and we'll go into that in a little bit more. But let me tell you a little bit about this David and Pauline Williams, because this case is shocking enough on its own, without them being now linked to a paedophile gang. Now, these people abused, and kids, what are known of, because there's many that are not known, but what they know of, as young as 7 years old. They abused both girls and boys. These are terrible, terrible people. So David and Pauline Williams have been convicted, and now in prison for a number of this historic offences, right, this catalogue of abuse, really. Not all of it is out, as they don't say everything, and there's only a certain amount of witnesses come forward. Really, this is quite a shocking case, this one in its own right. Now, they actually lived in Gloucestershire, very close to Rose and Fred West in the 80s. In there, Cromwell Street, they lived close to there. And then after that, after they moved from Gloucestershire, they then moved, I think, to Devon in the 90s. So then they took their crimes from Gloucestershire to Devon in the 90s. Now, it's strange that, isn't it? When you think in 1994, the West were then convicted of all this stuff going on. And these people are then moved out of there. Now, they were found guilty of 48, I think, individual and joint charges stemming over 15 years. Now, we know with Rose and Fred West that their case went, their victims and their offences was probably just as long or longer. I know Fred's was longer. For Rose about the same time. So these were like-minded individuals, these pair, and they knew each other. Now, David Williams, he was jailed after being found guilty of 11 counts of indecent assault, 10 counts of rape, 2 counts of gross indecency with a child, 3 counts of indecency with a child, 2 counts of cruelty, and her case was aiding and abetting, also indecent assault. Now, his wife Pauline, she was also sentenced to 12 years imprisonment, plus 4 for unextended licence, I think she got as well. And she was found guilty of 2 counts of aiding and abetting of rape, 2 counts of aiding and abetting and indecent assault, 3 counts of indecent assault. Because these didn't just sexually abuse, they physically abused, they hurt, they liked the pain. And they introduced these people to a lot more people in this group, and they would never mention who they were. So again, we now have paedophiles in this paedophile ring linked to Fred and Rose West. Fred and Rose West would leave their children with these people, and this is what was going on in their household. Now, how this investigation come across, I think it was Detective Constable Debbie Doe, and she was from the child abuse investigation. That was the unit that was led, and I think it was called, this investigation was Operation Abbey. Now, David and Pauline carrying out a string of sickening and callous attacks actually on children and teenagers without remorse, really, for over 15 years. Their campaign of abuse started in Gloucester, as I said earlier, and then continued when they moved to Devon, in Exeter and Treventon. The abuse of both physically and sexually was undertaken by both David and Pauline together. They enjoyed it very much like Rose and Fred West. One of the victims was as young as 7 years old when the abuse started, so they continued to abuse children throughout the years. These kids were terribly damaged through their abuse and suffering at the hands of these pair and others who this pair then brought into their paedophile ring. So in 2013 this investigation started really when a woman disclosed to a mental health professional. Now, you'll find a lot of people with mental health have been abused in some ways, and a lot of their mental health is caused, one, from the abuse itself, but also can be caused through not speaking, through holding it in. They feel guilty, they feel embarrassed, they feel that it's their fault, and a lot of these victims then have mental health because they cannot release themselves from this abuse, and this would have been terrible, terrible abuse. So in this mental health meeting, she did say, she finally came out and said that she was abused, and it was multiple rapes and multiple sexual abuse by David Williams when she was only 15, and it was a traumatic, terrible set of abuse here and rapes that was going on here, with physical abuse as well. The more pain the better, really. These kids were left terrible. So DC Doe said this woman was brave enough to agree to speak and make a complaint against David Williams in the relationship to the abuse that she had suffered at his hands as a young girl. Now, we often speak about victims of abuse, don't we? And especially sexual abuse, where they won't come forward because their fear, really. These people are still walking the streets. The fear, even though as you're an adult and you look at these perpetrators, can you say something? It's very difficult for these people to say it, but thank goodness she did, because when she opened that door, then others had then felt that they had the ability to come forward and they'd be listened, because a lot of these victims don't know if they're going to be believed, do they? You know, these people run a pub, these people, you know, had lives which from the outside looked normal, upstanding members of the community, and you've got people coming forward that feel they're not going to be believed because one, now she's left with mental health, and are people going to believe them? Is it just her mental health now, or is it the mental health that's caused through this abuse? That's what it comes down to. And so it's very difficult when victims come forward, and we hear in the press a lot, they're not believed, are they, straight away? It really deters people from coming forward, but this brave girl came forward and then opened the door for others to also have their say, but not all of them, only some. Now, all of these other victims had had the same traumatic experience as this girl had had. They'd all been sexually abused, they'd all been raped, they'd all been beaten, you know, terrorised, really, terrorised from a very young age, and it went on for quite a while, and then they was passed from one to another. So David and Pauline Williams were the perpetrators in these crimes, and it was without doubt, the proof was there that they had done this. From the descriptions and the stuff of what these people had said, the conviction here was a very safe one in this case. Even though, as you know, they all deny. Put these people through a court case, really. You've abused them their whole lives mainly. You've destroyed their lives, you've left them with mental health, suicidal. And yet now they have to go into court because you can't admit your guilt, even though the evidence is so overwhelming against you. You still put these people through it. It's a disgrace, you know, really. But that's the court system, is it? it's their right. They were found guilty in the end though. The other thing with this David and Pauline Williams is there's known a lot of abuse, there's known lots of different things, but there was also looking, and there was search actually on their property in Devon, because they were looking for a child's body, a baby's body really, and it had been said by a lot of these witnesses that had come forward about the abuse and stuff there, that there was a child there, a baby there, that was no longer there and couldn't be found. Now, as I've said to you a lot of times with paedophile gangs, that they don't register their children, or they don't register a child when it's born. That means if there's no register, they haven't got to register the death. So their home actually in Devon was excavated and everything, looking for this child's body. That child's body has never been found. So yes, not only do the police think that these people are paedophiles and was in a paedophile ring with Fred and Rose West and God knows who else was in this paedophile ring, that they're also murderers, but that can't be proved because the body of this child has never been found. And if anything ever comes out, I will keep you up to date. But for now, you know, these are the sort of people that we are talking about here. A person or persons, this married couple, this pub owners, landlords of a pub, and that's where he met actually, I think, in Gloucestershire when he met Fred. That's where he used to drink Fred. This is where a lot of these kids were abused, and then when they moved to Devon, they was then, upstanding members of the community, where they was abusing many, many children, and a lot of them have said that there was other kids and other stuff that probably are murdered somewhere along the line. So let's go into more of this cryptic clue, shall we, that we've got within this, and how this postcard has been analysed, and how then the link between the two couples have now been joined, really. So we had this couple now living in Devon, and this is where the body for this baby was searched but not found. The postcard was written to that address, and it was written to from the West to Williams Menage. Now, in 1990, and suggests that the West were on holiday, on a canal holiday, because they used to like to take their trips. Now, it's quite disturbing when you read what they write in here, because it shows you the mindset, because we know Rose West wrote this postcard, even though she denies it. But we know by these two bragging that they know them, it was wrote by her. So this postcard, this one written, or supposedly written by Rose West, is and I think it was brought out through the Times actually collection in this former Lissenden jail in Gloucestershire. It's understood, right, to have read. It includes the lines, Colin says, the birds are very friendly here, loads of wildlife, and then it's signed Mum and Dad. Now, Andy Jones of the museum said that it shows the code and the innuendo that the Wests run a child sex ring, and the Williams are part of that sex ring, plus others. Now, this postcard talks about the Williams menage. Now, the menage means animals. He says it's also a strong reference to an orgy. Now, we've had this when we talk about other cases, haven't we? Where we've had children being taken to, by paedophiles and used as sex toys for this group of people. And this is what they're saying, that this postcard represents. The animals are the orgy, the people, and the other bit where it says, lots of stuff here, meaning children. So he also believes the West had left their children in Williams, or the couple's care, and the postcard sort of references the daughter Mia in there. So he says there's compelling evidence that there's a strong connection between the two families. David Williams ran a pub in Gloucestershire, as I've said before, where Fred West drunk and boasted in court his connections with the West. This man is a sick individual. David and Pauline West were also both in their 50s when they started abusing children, that's what we know of, and that was in 1980. And one victim, as early as the youngest one that's to come forward and say, was 7-year-old at the time the abuse started. Now these people also run a Victorian inn in Exeter after moving to the city in 1990s, where they went on abusing a string of teenagers. So there's a history here. Fred West was awaiting trial for 12 charges when he hanged himself in prison in 1995. At the same time these people were moving around. Rose West was convicted, wasn't she, of 10 murders in 1995, and she is now serving life sentence. And Rose West will not tell you a thing about anything. She will die with everything she knows. She is not like Fred at all. This woman wouldn't say a thing. Now she's also charged, I think the charge is related to the deaths of the women of 20 years prior to that. So that they were all in this for many, many years, all of them. And there's many of them out there that were in this paedophile gang with this lot that's still out there and have never been caught. Never. So in 1991, this couple run this Gloucester pub, the Prince Albert pub. Now this is where Fred was a regular in this pub. Also Rose attended there, I think, in the thing I tell you about where they went for a drink. And after they went for a drink is when then she attacked one of the kids in the car, and that was in the pub that they done that in. So we don't really know the exact date of when this David and Pauline Williams moved to Devon, but we do know it was in the 90s at some point. By this stage, though, wasn't it? Rose and Fred West were under investigation, and then, with the court and everything, they'd gone. So they moved to Devon and they run this Victoria Inn in Exeter, and the abuse continued until 2004. In 2013, this operation, Abbey, this investigation into them, David and Pauline, started. In 2015, David and Pauline Williams was jailed for a total of 35 years for sexually abusing 10 children over a 15-year period. In 2016, the police began to excavate the Williams home in Exeter to look for bodies. So listen, I hope you liked this little bit. I wish I had more on this case, but anything with a paedophile ring, and when you have murderers and criminals and perpetrators like these, where you have Fred and Rose West, where Fred probably would have told you in the end lots of stuff if he hadn't killed himself. Rose will never do it. These people love the association with the Wests, but still say we didn't do anything, and so they're never ever going to give you the full truth of what has done and who they have abused. Now there is many of it. Do I think they only started abusing at the age of 50? No, I do not believe that at all. Because if you're once a paedophile at 50, you're probably a paedophile in your 20s. So I think this man, and we know they're complete bloody liars anyway, because they're bloody paedophiles, and terrible what they've done. They know what they've done to these children, many, many more than what's come forward, but they won't say. They won't say. So I hope these people rot, really, on their 35 years in prison. But I'll keep you updated, because we all know, don't we, especially probably with Pauline, who will probably get out on licence earlier. There's no difference between Pauline and David. She was there. You aided and abetted this man. You continued to allow him to abuse. You abused yourself. You are an abuser. So, and this woman's only got 12 years and going to be out. So I'll keep you updated on all of that. But thank you for joining our membership programme. Thank you. And I hope you enjoy these background cases, little cases that add on to the next ones. So until the next time, bye-bye.